What's up, everybody? Ryco here. That's right, I'm back with a face cam. Let's go. Sorry about that. I know the last few videos didn't really have a face cam, but moving forward, I'll be sure to include it. Today, we're going to be going over the Naturia Paleozoic deck. We're going to be showcasing some gameplay, and if you haven't checked out the deck profile already, I just posted a deck profile on it, so be sure to check it out either before watching this video or after if you're curious. The deck overall is a lot of fun. Honestly, I definitely recommend it if you're looking to spice things up this meta. Out of all the ways you can be playing Naturia right now, this is probably the best way you can be playing it, especially since some of the trap cards right now, for example, Daruma Karma Cannon, is so incredibly powerful. Overall, this deck's so much fun, and in this video, we'll be showcasing some gameplay for it. But before we jump into that gameplay, I wanted to take a moment to thank you all so much. I know I say this a lot, but really, I couldn't be doing this without you all. You all are awesome. If you're not already subscribed, be sure to subscribe and hit that like button as well, as it helps a bunch. But anyway, with that, let's just jump right into the gameplay. So jumping right in, we end up winning the rock, paper, scissors. That's right, it's very crucial, especially when you're playing a trap deck. I know, shocking, to win the dice roll. But even if you're going second with this deck, which you'll see in a bit, it's not really the worst thing in the world. So as you can see, this hand is rather good. Opening Reasoning in a 60 card deck, very, very powerful, and we're gonna see just how powerful this card can be, especially in this deck. So our opponent calls 4, and we just start milling. We hit insane mills, as you can see already, and unfortunately, we did mill a 4, but that's not the worst thing in the world, because if you look, we hit a tree, we hit a transaction rollback, and we hit some good targets for rollback as well. Overall, a solid mill, especially since we got some paleos in the graveyard as well. So on the resolution, we'll go ahead and declare the effect of Sacred Tree, getting us a search. Definitely will come up. We're going to go ahead and grab that Mole Cricket. I love Mole Cricket. It's such a cool card. One of the best support Naturia could ever receive. It's unfortunate that Tree is at 1, but maybe one day it'll come back. But for now, it's not the end of the world. We could still put up some nasty boards. Right now, we're going to go ahead and use Cricket, normal Cricket, declare the effect, summon the Camellia. And Camellia is going to go ahead and dump us an Antjaw. Now, we're not trying to do too much combo stuff on this turn, because again, this is more of a control deck. And so we're just really trying to set up and build our board, and we're not really trying to OTK. We're in this for the long run. We're in this for the grind game. We dump an Antjaw. We're going to go ahead and set some of our traps, and we will pass with a rollback in hand as just a discard target. It's not really the best thing in the world to set, but if you have a way to pop it, then it could be fine. But overall, it's just fine in hand for now. So our opponent is obviously playing Melodious Runic, and that's a really cool combination of cards because the Runic cards draw a bunch, the Melodious cards set up big board, and it's very powerful overall. But we're definitely going to be seeing what we can do to stop our opponent from building a board and realistically to see what we can do about winning. So they're going to summon the Hugins, declare the effect, and then we're going to chain Camellia to summon from the grave, and also chain the Mole Cricket because a monster was special summoned from your opponent's extra deck, so that'll be able to float back too. The Mole Cricket will come back. Excellent, glad to have that back, and Antjaw is back. That's right, Antjaw is such an incredible card, and although it won't really be coming up that much in this game, Antjaw being a level 2 that's not once per turn to be able to just summon a Naturia from the deck, it's a level 3 Naturia, don't get me wrong, level 3 or lower, but it's very, very good for flooding the field and for getting your Naturia pieces up and going. So our opponent continues, and they're going to activate Stip. Still in the draw phase at this point, you know what? Fine, that's fair. It would have been nice if we put up a Nat Beast earlier on, but of course we didn't know what our opponent was playing. Our opponent used that, we banished Trap Trick off the top, not the worst thing in the world, and they proceed to main phase. In the main phase, they'll activate Fountain, and then they'll activate Destruction, going for one of our back rows. They roll a dice because, you know, they're still not sure what our back row is going to look like, and luckily, they end up hitting a Rise to Full Height. It's not really going to matter too much in this matchup, but hitting Rise to Full Height out of the Marilla and the Griefing, that's obviously the one I would rather them hit. We end up banishing off the top, and we hit a rollback off the top. That's not that good. So we have a rollback in the grave, a rollback in the hand, and a banished rollback. Not the worst thing in the world, but not the best either. So they're going to go ahead and use Fountain, and before they put back and draw, they get a little ahead of themselves. Okay? You know, they're trying to draw some cards and unbrick their hand a bit. But we're going to go ahead and chain the rollback, targeting the Dinomischus. And by targeting the Dinomischus, we'll be able to clear that Fountain and put the other rollback we have in hand into the grave. Very, very powerful. Very strong. He thinks that Hugin can protect from being banished, either that or he thought Dinomischus popped, but That's not the case. It's not that paleo that pops spells and traps. This is the paleo that banishes. That's very, very good against runic. So we clear the fountain, pitch a rollback, and now I'm feeling pretty comfortable here. Their hand, not the best in the world, so they end up setting one and passing turn to us. So we draw for turn, and it's an ant jaw. Okay, not the best in the world, not the worst in the world. Now that we know our opponent's playing runic, we could just summon a Gnat Beast. We'll get back to cricket, and Gnat Beast is essentially game because, yeah, if you've ever played runic and had a Gnat Beast summon against you, that's true pain. That's true misery because Gnat Beast is a hell of a card, and that's definitely one of the best boss monsters we have in this deck. Out of all the Paleozoic builds there are out there right now, Gnat Beast carries, and I think this is the one card that makes the difference and takes this deck over the top versus the other Paleozoic builds. Overall, very powerful, as you can see. So we're going into game 2, and we're going second. We unfortunately drew the Stink Bug, not really that good, and yes, we kept in Threatening Roar versus a runic deck. Hear me out. We play Threatening Roar, we play Rise to Full Height, we play cards that are battle phase, and there's not really too many cards in the side deck that are good versus specifically runic. So we had to keep in some of the traps, and unfortunately, we ended up drawing the Threatening Roar, but it's not the worst thing. So they go ahead and use Tip in the draw phase, and of course, they hit a rollback off the top. So good. They proceed to main phase, and then they activate Ostinato. Oh boy, if anyone knows Modern Yu-Gi-Oh right now, this is arguably the most broken card in the game right now. You can throw this engine into a lot of decks, and even if you're just playing the pure, the amount of advantage and the board you can build just off of this one card is absurd. So we're gonna go ahead and fast forward because obviously we didn't draw any hand traps, we didn't draw any real interruption to stop our opponent from playing, so we're just gonna go ahead and let them build a board. So they'll continue. Their hand's definitely pretty good here, especially the fact that they have 2 runics, a fountain, Ostinato, a second Ostinato in case we had Ash, and they're just kind of popping off. We're gonna go ahead and fast forward through this a bit. They draw a Rainbow Bridge, definitely interesting. So that's definitely some spice they've got going on here. And with this, although I'm not sure if that was the best rank 4 they could have went into, especially since they have an Odd Eyes Vortex, but then again, they have no real monster in their extra deck to be able to negate with Odd Eyes Vortex, so summoning a Baguska wasn't the worst. So we're playing into 2 Apollousa, any runic cards they have in hand, and they have a Baguska, and essentially follow-up. So we'll just go ahead and start off by normal summoning Antjaw, and Antjaw will be moved into defense position, and then we will set, and pass turn there. In the end phase, they want to try and get some draws going on, so they're going to go ahead and start using their runics. So they negate, banish 3 off the top, and then they banish 3 more off the top, hitting another rollback, of course. So now we have 2 banished rollbacks. Okay, not ideal, but there are definitely ways we can stay in this game. So they target 3 runic spells, put them on the bottom, and draw 3 cards. Not the best draws, but they are playing Horus cards apparently. So, you know, their deck is definitely spicy and their hand's not bad given the fact that they could just pitch a Rainbow Bridge with Imseti. And now they have a Called By too. So they'll continue. They'll detach with Baguska, of course, the standby maintenance cost of Baguska. And we're just kind of chilling. There's not really the worst thing in the world, especially given that we know that they don't have a battle phase because of the runics. So I feel pretty safe and confident here. They'll go ahead and clear their fountain to activate the Walls of Imperial Tomb, trying to search an Imseti here. I'll chain Olenoids, which this one is the MST. This one is the one Hugin can prevent destruction with, but they don't have any runics and there's an Oppo in their EMZ. So we'll go ahead and use Olenoids, get rid of that field spell after they declare the effect because we don't want them getting access to their Horus cards. They'll continue their turn, and honestly, there's not really much they can do here. So they go to battle, skip battle, and pass back to us. It's at this point to where we also have the Morganite, which we activated. I did forget about that, but before I go into the deck, I do remember I say, oh yeah, second draw with Morganite, and was totally fine with it because the deck wasn't changed at all. So we go ahead and use Morella, chain Olenoids. Olenoids will float back, and Morella will dump a Sacred Tree, one of the best targets we can possibly send off of Morella. Sacred Tree will go ahead and grab us a Search, and this is where we can grab the really, really broken card because we already have a Naturia. We'll grab Bamboo Shoot. And if you guys haven't read Bamboo Shoot yet, let me take a moment and explain. While you control this face-up card that was tribute summoned by tributing a Naturia monster, your opponent cannot activate spells or traps. Pretty good. A one-sided Mystic Mine, essentially, for spells and traps. Nice. Very, very good. And so we just go ahead and normal. It goes to defense because of Baguska, but they still can't activate spells or traps because this isn't an activated effect. It's just a lingering condition. We go ahead and get a second normal summon off the Morganite, and we normal summon the Stink Bug, which of course moves to defense position. We set a few more, which Daruma Karma Cannon, again, I can't emphasize how broken this card is this format. Absolutely love it. If your deck can play Karma Cannon, it's definitely in a good position. So we'll go ahead and turn back to them. They'll go ahead and start turn. Of course, they have to detach with Baguska, so they go ahead and do that. And it's at this point to where they don't have a skip battle phase anymore. They can just go to battle phase because they didn't activate any runic cards. So they switch everything to attack and go to battle phase. In the battle phase, I decide to use Threatening Roar. So it looks like this trap came up. They don't really have anything to respond to the Threatening Roar, especially since they can't use spells or traps. And so we'll go ahead and chain Morella. Morella will float back, which is very, very good. This person was waiting a little bit, but very, very good. So now our Morella floats back. They can't attack this turn, and I'm definitely feeling safe. They go to main 2, and they definitely think here. They link 2 into Little Knight. And yes, unfortunately, Little Knight does clear the Bamboo Shoot, but overall, I probably should have stopped them. Looking back on it, I should have just used Karma Cannon after they flipped everything in attack, but they would have been able to use spells and traps anyways. So overall, I'm pretty much okay with losing the Bamboo Shoot here. After they use SP Little Knight and banish the Bamboo Shoot, they set 2 and pass. In the end phase, I'll go ahead and use Morella, and I'll dump a rollback. So that way, although we lost 2 rollbacks, we still have a rollback in the grave to do some stuff with. And since we have a Karma Cannon set, we're basically safe from dying for at least 2 turns. So I'm not too worried here. So I draw for turn, and honestly, it's at this point where I keep forgetting about Morganite. You have to remember with Morganite that you draw 2 cards and you get 2 normal summons. And in the grind game, it can be hard to remember. So again, it's important to remember. Always draw 2 with Morganite if you resolve it. But in this case, we're gonna go ahead and overlay for Opabinia. I did forget to draw 2, and so we'll go ahead and search, and then we'll use Leoncolia. Leoncolia will put back a rollback, so although they banish it off the top, Leoncolia will be able to just put it back, so that way we get access to it. So we'll be able to chain to the Leoncolia because they don't have any response. The Morella will be able to float back, and Leoncolia will put back the rollback. We'll go ahead and chain, we'll activate Olenoids on a new chain, and they'll chain Called By. Now, the reason why they're doing this, they're hitting the ant jaw, but they're stopping us from floating back a Paleo and getting another XYZ here. Definitely the smart play. If you're playing against Paleo, you want to make sure you're stopping them from getting those Paleos back from the grave. That's where their grind game and their ability to make rank 2s really come up. So definitely makes the right call. He banishes it, stops me from floating back, and I pop a Rainbow Bridge. It's at this point where I knew our opponent probably didn't draw the best cards off that fountain initially, but they still have a pretty solid board overall. So it's at this point to where I'll simply try and pass turn to them, and they'll go ahead and use Rainbow Bridge. And then they realized, oh, they don't have any targets for Rainbow Bridge. They drew their field spells. They drew their fountain, their Imperial Tomb, and they have another fountain in hand. So Rainbow Bridge is essentially dead here. Unfortunate. F's in the chat, as you can see. So they draw for turn, and unfortunately, they drew a Dwamatef. Not good. You never really want to draw those kinds of Horus cards. But even then, even if they didn't draw those, we're still pretty much fine, as we have a Karma Cannon, a rollback to be able to copy another Karma Cannon, and then another rollback after that. So it's at this point where they go battle phase and attack over our Morella. Morella will die and it'll leave. And then I decide not to use Stink Bug's effect to end the battle phase because it's going to be negated, or they can also just Little Knight. It's not really worth it here, so I just let them do that. So they go to end phase and they pass the turn back to us. Again, my bad. Please don't flame me in the comments. But you have to remember, if you activate Morganite, you get to draw 2. Okay, duly noted. So I go ahead and use Opabinia, get a search, and then I activate Leoncolia, targeting the 3rd rollback that's banished. Leoncolia is so incredibly powerful here. And then in order for them to try and stop me from floating back more Paleos, they go ahead and chain Little Knight. Fair. Definitely understandable. And then it's at this point, because they used Little Knight, that we can now safely activate Karma Cannon and it'll clear their 2 Link monsters. Because I was waiting essentially for them to use the Little Knight because I didn't want to use Karma Cannon just for them to chain Little Knight and banish. So now that they use Little Knight as an attempt to stop our floating effect with Paleos, now we can safely clear their board. So things are definitely looking up here. After the Karma Cannon, we can then finally float back a Paleo. So the Paleo gets set, both Paleos get set, their 2 monsters get sent, I return the rollback, and then I flip Opabinia. I go to battle phase and I attack. Well, why did I attack with 0? Well, because Zeus is a good card, obviously. So go ahead and pass back, and now we have a 2-mat Zeus. Things are definitely looking good here. So they activate a Fountain, and they activate Runic Destruction as special. It's at this point where I figure that they're probably bricking pretty hard, so I decide I'm not going to let them get this draw. So I go ahead and use Zeus, detach 2, and send the whole field. Because our Paleo was flipped face down, it gets to fall to grave. That's a fun little fact to keep mind of. Then they activate Talents to draw 2, and unfortunately, they drew the Horus, that's extremely hard to pronounce, and another Ostinato, which is basically dead at this point. Thank gosh, there were so many good cards they could have drawn, and as you can see in the chat, he's not happy about his draws. Definitely could be better, but you know what? Can't complain. Or at least on my end. So I start off the main phase. After they turn to me, normal summon Camellia, send a Cricket so that way if they summon from the extra deck, I can get the Cricket float back, go to battle phase, declare some attacks, poke for damage. Now that we have control of the board, we can start really pushing for damage. So we go to the main 2, and it's at this point where I realize, oh, I forgot the Morganite second draw, oh well. And our opponent was definitely cool, and he said, you know what, just go ahead and get that draw. And I asked, are you sure? And he's like, yeah. He doesn't really mind because obviously he's testing the sauce too. So I had to draw another card, even though our deck was gone into. It's fine. He was very understanding. But this draw didn't really mean anything, and this is at the point to where he's not really liking his deck too much. I'm sure this deck can definitely pop off, but when you're bricking like this, not ideal. So whether or not it mattered, that second draw didn't really matter. He draws for turn, and it's nothing really to get him out of this situation. And so, yeah, as you can see, this deck is very, very powerful. Going first, it's insane. This deck can do so many cool things, and you're not really building a board turn 1, but you're getting into a grind game, and once you get into that grind game, it's very, very hard to lose. And then going second, it's not the worst thing in the world either, because you essentially just set your whole hand, maybe summon a Naturia to be able to play on their turn, then you pass. And if you draw something like Karma Cannon, or if you're able to mill a rollback with a Karma Cannon, you can definitely clear boards very, very easily. Overall, this deck snowballs like crazy and is one of the most fun builds I've had with this deck. Naturia, I miss it so much. I played it when it was full power, and being able to play Naturia again is just so nice. But yeah, as you can see, this deck can definitely do some cool things, and there's a lot of flexibility in deck building as well. Nonetheless, if you stuck around this long, thank you so much. You're the true MVP. Make sure to like the video and subscribe, and until next time, peace.